These are the worst fouls in football history. Ever since his time at Real Madrid, Marcelo has been seen as a lovely guy. Even after his long spell at Madrid, almost everyone loved him. I am saying almost, because there is one guy in Brazil who probably hates Marcelo right now. In a game against the Argentinos Juniors, Marcelo stamped down on Luciano Sanchez when attempting dribbling. Replays showed the moment Marcelo planted his boot on Sanchez's leg, resulting in his knee giving way under the Brazilian's full weight. Marcelo left the pitch in tears because he knew how bad his challenge was, and he later apologized through social media. Another player that we all love but who made one of the worst tackles in history is Heung-min Son. His late tackle on Andre Gomes in Tottenham's draw against Everton in 2019 resulted in Everton's midfielder breaking his ankle. Everyone on that pitch started to panic, and almost every fan was left in disbelief. What shocked everybody was the fact that Gomes literally passed out from the pain. I remember watching that game and saying, "Holy cow, this tackle might end his career." Probably the nicest player in the world burst into tears after realizing what he had done before being shown a red card following a VR check. Thankfully, Gomes made his return 3 months later, and he still plays football at a pretty high level. If you think this one was brutal, wait until you see the last two. Arsenal fans, you might want to look away now. It was February 27, 2010 when Arsenal faced Stoke. There were signs that we might see some tough challenges in this game, as in the pre-match conference, both managers made it very clear that Stoke and Arsenal hated each other. Aaron Ramsey was then seen as one of the most promising players at Arsenal, but his career took a big hit when Ryan Shawcross snapped his leg. One Stoke player said, "I was there when Ryan Shawcross snapped Aaron Ramsey's leg in half. I heard the crack from the bench. I heard the screaming." While the Englishman was sent off and suspended for 3 matches, Ramsey was kept out of action for 9 months. Before we continue the video, I want to ask you something. 99% of you are not subscribed to the channel. Let's lower that number by pressing the subscribe button. If I hit 3,000 subscribers by the end of the month, I have something very special prepared for you. Now let's continue with another brutal foul. Arsenal was probably the toughest team to face back in the late 2000s because their players seemed to have forgotten they were playing football. In a game against them, John Terry almost died. Arsenal and Chelsea were facing each other in a League Cup final, and we all know how big the rivalry is between them. The game was tied up with a few minutes left, and Chelsea had a corner. Abou Diaby had an awful first touch, and Terry wanted to head the ball into the goal to win the game for Chelsea. Well, he headed the ball, but it was over the top and he was kicked in the head by the Frenchman with full power. He swallowed his tongue, couldn't breathe, and needed to be escorted to the hospital. The stadium was left in awe. The hit was so bad that Diaby prayed for his life right next to him. This shows that football is more than just a game. After Terry recovered, he stated that the hit was so hard that he couldn't remember anything from that moment. Abou Diaby, the player that was praying for Terry's life, had a really bad injury history. Even though he was an incredibly gifted midfielder, he was constantly hampered by injuries. He suffered 42 injuries during his 9 years at Arsenal, including damage to his ACL, 5 thigh muscle strains, 11 calf strains, 2 sprained ankles, and a concussion. But it was one injury that he never recovered from. Arsenal was winning 3-0 against Sunderland, and in stoppage time, Diaby intercepted a ball and passed it to Ebout. As he did, Dan Smith jumped in like a bull and hit his right ankle. Even though it was a reckless tackle, he was only shown a yellow card. Poor DB was forced to have 3 different injuries and 8 months of rehab. He had such bad luck with injuries that he spent 46.5% of his 3,339 days as an Arsenal player on the sidelines. Brutal. I really feel bad for Diaby, but I feel even worse for Gavi because in the game against Osasuna, he almost lost his ear. The foul was so bad that the teenager needed medical treatment on the pitch. Unfortunately, he was bleeding too much, so I can't really show the horrible tackle here, but trust me, I've only seen such a hard kick from Conor McGregor, and he is a UFC fighter. Even though he got his ear stitched up, he continued playing like a true warrior. After the game, Barcelona posted a picture of his ear on Twitter with the caption, "Everything is okay." Even though he recovered from that injury, later in the season he tore his ACL and he is sidelined for the next 6 months. Tough luck for the poor kid. It's been 14 years since Spain faced the Netherlands in the World Cup final, and I still don't know how Nigel de Jong was only shown the yellow card for this horrible challenge on Xabi Alonso. Everybody knew that the Netherlands would resort to some rather controversial tactics in order to stop Spain, but no one would have thought that they would have started behaving like MMA fighters on the pitch. We heard about the either the ball or the man theory, but Nigel took it to another level as he hit Alonso right in the chest. This kung fu kick was so hard to watch back then, as Xabi was left rolling around in disbelief. Well, at least he is more than okay now, as he managed to create an unstoppable side at Leverkusen. We all know Peter Cech for his iconic helmet, but he didn't wear it on his own initiative. On October 14, 2006, Reading hosted Chelsea in a Premier League game. After only 20 seconds, the Czech was hit in the face by Stephen Hunt, resulting in one of the most horrific moments in football history. Sage was replaced after several minutes by Kudasini, who himself got knocked down, forcing John Terry to play in goal for the rest of the game. Sage was able to return home after 10 days, but the doctor said that he would be out for 2 months. He made his comeback in a 2-0 loss against Liverpool, where he debuted his new look entering the pitch wearing a rugby-style headguard. Even though he retired from football in 2019, later that year he announced that he will sign for ice hockey side Guildford Phoenix as a goaltender. You simply cannot keep this man away from sports. Axel Witsel isn't necessarily known as a dirty player, but back in 2009 he was responsible for one of the worst fouls in history. Back then he played for Standard Liège and they were facing their rival, Anderlecht. The ball was going down on the left side of the pitch close to the touchline, and Marcin Wasilewski tried to keep the ball in play. That proved to be a very bad decision. As his leg was stretched towards the ball, Witsel came sprinting at full pace from opposite angle trying to tackle the ball. Well, he didn't do that, but instead he crashed down onto the lower leg of Wasilewski with full weight. The leg of the pole was snapped in two, resulting in some horror scenes. He came back after over 8 months and celebrated his return to Anderlecht's first team with the opening goal in a 2-1 win against Zulte Waregem. In his entire career, Thomas Müller received only 2 red cards, but one of them left everybody in shock. It was the last match in the group stage of the UCL in 2018, and both Ajax and Bayern were trying to score the deciding goal. In the 76th minute, Müller tried to reach a long ball, and he flew through the air like a bird with his legs up. He was so focused on trying to reach the ball that he didn't realize that Tagliafico wanted the same thing. The only difference was that the Argentine had his feet still on the ground, whilst Müller was in the air. Thomas hit the Ajax player directly in the head with his shoes, resulting in a head injury for the Argentine left back. Luckily, after he was treated on the pitch, he was able to continue the game. And now the toughest tackle in history belongs to the angry Irishman, Roy Keane. To understand why he did this, we have to go back to 1997. Alfie Holland, the father of Erling, was playing for City, while Keane was playing for United. Back then, the rivalry between the two Manchester clubs wasn't that hot, so it's not badge-related. Roy Keane was through on goal, and Alfie stopped him, causing him to hit the ground so hard that he had to receive medical attention directly on the field. What angered Keane was not the foul, was the fact that Alfie was screaming at him to get up as he thought he was faking it. Keane tore his ACL, but when he faced City again, his only wish was to take revenge. So after 4 years, in 2001, with no eyes for the ball, Keane brutally stamped down Holland's knee, ending his career. After that tackle, the Irishman said some very colorful words to Holland, which I don't want to say here, but also said, "I didn't wait for Mr. Elleray to show me the red card. I turned and walked to the dressing room. Now I know why lots of people call him the most aggressive footballer in history." These are the worst fouls in history in my opinion, but if you know of other brutal tackles, you are free to tell me in the comments.